Hello guys, welcome back to another episode. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it was sent to me by one of our admins, and the message reads like this. Hello brother Nashi, how are you? Can you please post my story as anonymous, because I have my own story that I want to share with you. My story goes on like this. Soon after I had graduated from university, I was then lucky enough that I started working. At first I had gotten a job, and at the place where I had gotten this job, it was a start-up company. There was someone from our neighborhood. She had started her own real estate company, so I started working for her. She used to manage a lot of properties, and from there on I then thought of trying something else, because when I was working for her, she was struggling a little bit. Like sometimes we would get paid, sometimes we would not get paid. So I started applying to different companies. Some of them, they were multinational companies. So finally I then got a response after I had applied to so many companies. When I got the response, I was now having an opportunity to work for a multinational company. I then went for the job interview, and when I had gone for the job interview, that was when I started working as a real estate manager. I worked there for a very long time until I then started applying, but I was applying in that same company because whilst I was working, I was still going to school, furthering my education. After I had applied, that was when I got the opportunity to go and work in another country, but here in Africa. So first I went and I worked in our Southern African region. That was when I told that if I wanted, I could go and work for the same company in Accra. I then went and I started working there in Ghana. I worked there for 3 good years. Then after I had worked there, I thought that let me return back home so that I can rest a little bit. Whilst I was there in Ghana, I had dated several guys, but there was the last guy that I had dated before I had returned back to South Africa. Me and that guy, we had clicked. There was a deeper connection between me and that guy, and I knew that this was the man that I was supposed to get married to. The only problem was that he was from Ghana and I was from South Africa, but we promised each other that when I returned back home, we were going to find a way so that he can come and stay with me here in South Africa. After we had gone through the process, that was when he came here to South Africa. When he got here to South Africa, when I was now staying with him, because when he had came here, when I went to pick him up from the airport, that was when he said that we should get married as quickly as possible. But I just said we'll do it, even though I loved him, but I just kept on postponing everything. I don't know why I kept on postponing. It was only after I had postponed for a very long time that was when I saw his true nature. He was no longer that indoor person, because when we were still there in Ghana, he was always that guy who would be indoors watching TV or playing those video games. But when he came here to South Africa, he started going out, and he just said that he wanted to have a good time since I didn't want to get married to him. And he just wanted to check South Africa out, like he wanted to visit each and every place. At that time, I was madly in love with him, and I was trying to impress him, to show him that even though we were not yet married, but I was his wife to be, and he was my soul mate. You know, us ladies, when we are in love, we are willing to do anything. But that guy, brother Nashi, I let him blow through my bank account. He was using my money left, right, and center. And by the time that he broke up with me, that was when I realized that I was left with nothing, and he just dumped me. This guy, brother Nashi, he literally used all of my savings, and I was so stupid enough to believe that I was able to impress him. After he had blown my savings, he then convinced me to go and take up some loans, and I took some loans because at that time when we were fighting, whenever we would have an argument, that was when he would say, prove it to me that you love me, and I will say, how much more do you want me to prove it to you that I love you? I am taking care of you. And you'll be like, marry me so that I can say that you love me. But I was not sure of his behavior. It was only after he had broken up with me that was when I saw the damage that he had done financially in my life, and I was the one who was stupid enough to let him blow through my savings. And this guy, when he was here in South Africa, Brother Nashi, he was that type of a man who wanted a classy, soft life. That was all that he wanted. Breakfast in bed and drinking whiskey all day long. And whenever I'll be like, why don't you go out and get a job? And he will say, no, I am not legally allowed to work here. So he was only legally allowed to spend my money, and he was not allowed to work. Brother Nashi, that man, he blew my bank account, and it hurts me a lot, because when this guy came here to South Africa, I had a lot of money in my saving accounts, and I thought that this money, it was going to assist me by the time that I would have gotten married, because I had that perfect marriage in my head. Maybe that was the reason why I let this man use my money just like that. I mean, like within 2 months after this man had came to South Africa, he had just spent my money just like that. That was when the fight began. Each and every day you'll be fighting with me, and I suspect that by the time that he started fighting with me, he had already gotten his next girlfriend, because on the day when I said I can't do it anymore, but it was not like I didn't want him anymore. You know, when you are tired of fighting, you reach a point in a relationship whereby you just say, I cannot do it anymore. Then said, fine, if you cannot do it anymore, let me walk away. So I let him walk away, knowing that he was going to return, but he never returned. Up until today, Brother Nashi, I do not even know if he is still in South Africa or if he went back home, because he just took his small bag and he left. He just left most of his clothes with me. So for a very long time, I tried to get hold of him, because I had that hope, because he had left his clothes with me. So I thought that he still loved me. But after a few years had gone by, that was when I realized that this guy, he had just used me so that he can be here in South Africa. I'm not sure what he is up to right now. So after this heartbreak, brother, I then started dating a lot of different men until I met the man whom I can say finally destroyed my life. Like this guy that I met the second time around, he just sent me a friend request, and I quickly accepted his friend request. I saw that on his profile, he was just standing there, you know, in the middle of flashy cars, Bentley and your sport cars. I felt like this was the man who was going to come and save me, and he was a local guy as well. So I thought that, you know, I have had enough with these foreign guys. It was so much better that I date someone who was a local. After I had accepted his friend request, then we started dating. First we dated online until finally we then started dating each other physically. This guy, he was like ultra rich. I could not even understand where his money was coming from. So this guy, he had lots of houses. He had 3 houses. He had another house that he used to love to stay in. It was in the Northern Cape, and at that place there was a garage. The garage was really big because it could fit 10 cars at once, but the way that you would park these cars, it will be one after the other. But each and every time that I'll be with him at his Northern Cape house, there were always 10 cars that were parked in the garage, and outside there were more cars. This guy, before he passed away, he was into cars. After he passed away, Brother Nashi, I don't even know what happened to all of his wealth, because he kept on saying that he didn't have any family and he didn't have a child. After a little while, that was when he told me that he had done some sacrifices, and he started defending himself on that night when he told me the true story of his life. He told me that the reason why he ended up being the man that he was, it was because of his mother. He said that his mother, she was that kind of a woman who was never there in his life. She only came back into his life after she had gotten sick, and there was no one who was willing to take care of her. So He then took her in, but after he had taken her in, he had already spoken with another traditional healer, and that traditional healer was the one who ended up helping him to sacrifice his mother in the way that he told me that he did. He said that they went to a river, but it was not like a river, it was a dam. When they went there, it was him, the traditional healer, and some people, and his sick mother. Then the traditional healer instructed him to carry his mother and to go into that dam whilst he was carrying his mother, until he had reached a point whereby his mother's body was now underneath the water, and he was instructed to push his mother into the water for a minute. After that, that was when he was instructed to take his mother out of the water. After he had gotten out of the water, he then said that when he returned back home, that was when his mom got so sick and she died. But he had been instructed to make sure that the mom was not going to die whilst she was in hospital. So what the guy did is that he had taken the mother to go to other private clinic, and then the private clinic had discharged her. So she was sick at home, but there was a nurse who used to come to attend to the mother, but the mother died not at the hospital. After the mom had died, the man told me that when the police had came and the forensic team, after they had gone, that was when that traditional healer came. The traditional healer came and took the blankets and everything that was on the bed, on that same bed where she was lying before she had passed away. Then the traditional healer went with those items back to the place, and after the funeral, the men told me that they then went to his mother's grave to do more rituals. After they had done some rituals, they picked a date whereby he was supposed to go and sleep on top of his mother's grave. So after he had slept on his mother's grave for the whole night, he told me that was when his mother's spirit was then risen up and trapped by that traditional healer, and he was using his mother's spirit to make all the money that he had. When he told me this story, instead of me being afraid, I was really interested, because at that time I had reached a point in my life whereby I didn't even care or anything, because that man, he had broken my heart. That man that I had made it possible for him to be here in South Africa. That was when the man kept on giving me spiritual guidance. So I then begged him and I told him that I also wanted to become that same person that he was, and he said that it was going to require a lot of sacrifices financially, and he could not assist me because the money that he had, the traditional healer that he had assisted him, the traditional healer could not accept his money because it was blood. There was blood that will be all over the money. I said, it is fine. How much is needed? He then told me the money that was needed. So I started saving the money until I had gotten the money. After I had saved enough money, he took me to the place where that traditional healer was staying. At first, when I looked at that man, I thought that this man is just crazy because he was smelling like hell. I think that this man, he can even go for 5 years without bathing. But I was told that this traditional healer, he goes for 2 years without bathing. The only part of his body that he will be bathing, it will be his private parts, but the rest of the body, he does not wash it for about 2 years. So this man instructed me on how I was supposed to do my rituals. This man told me that there was some discharge that he wanted, this discharge that would have came out of my body. I said, how so? He then said that you are going to make a plan. So he prepared some herbs for me, but these herbs that he prepared, it was more like that tea that a lot of people here in South Africa drink when you are cleaning your system. After he had prepared those herbs for me, I then started noticing that a lot of discharge was now coming out of my private parts, and that was the discharge that he wanted from me. When I told him that there was discharge that was coming out of my system, he then took a small clay pot. He told me that I had to squat in such a way that the discharge will be leaving my private parts and falling into that clay pot. So as I was squatting like that, the discharge, it was just coming out of my private parts, and it was a lot. This discharge that was coming out, it was more like urine, not like your regular discharge, but it was smelly, like I was someone who had not bathed for several days. After I had done this, Brother Nashi, that was when that man opened this other small container. When he had opened that small container, I saw that he was holding an ant in his hand. There is that type of an ant. It is a black ant, and that ant, if you try to mess it up, it will start smelling. After he had pushed that ant into my private parts, he told me that I had to go into another room so that I can rest, and he said that it was going to be very painful. So I went into another room and I rested. This ant, Brother Nashi, whenever I would move or shift my body, that ant will just sting me, because I felt that ant as it was going up my private parts, until I felt that ant had gone and it was now sitting or resting in my womb. I rested the whole day, Brother Nashi, but it was very painful. If women think that labor pain is painful, there is that pain, Brother Nashi, that you can't even describe. That was the pain that I felt on that day. After that, that was when the men told me that everything was going to be okay. So after I had made money, I then decided to quit my job because financially I was okay. I have tried to have a child with several men, but I have failed, and I know that it is going to be very difficult to have a baby, because that old man that assisted me, he then abandoned me, and he said that I do not want to see you ever at my place. What happened is that there was another day after these rituals had been performed on my body. I was just sitting on the toilet seat as I was just doing my stuff. I then saw that there was something that wanted to come out of my private parts. This thing, it looked like a cotton ball, but it was coming out of my private parts, and it was dark in color, like it was black. Then that thing, I pulled it out, and it was painful as I was pulling it out, feeling really scared because this thing, it was like breathing. I then decided to flush it in the toilet. After I had seen this horrifying thing that was breathing, that it came out of my private parts, and after flushing it out of fear, I then returned back to that traditional healer. But instead of him telling me what was that thing that I saw, he was so angry, and he said, "Why did you flush that thing? You were not supposed to flush it, because you were supposed to return that thing back here to me." But I don't know why this man, he was so rude towards me. He only said, "You cannot go to a doctor, and after you have gone to a doctor, and after you've been given some prescription, and you just flush those prescription pills, you cannot do that. Now get out of my consulting room, because there are many people that I need to attend to." That man has since refused to assist me any further. He said I should never return back to his consulting room. That guy that I was dating, Brother Nash, he died. He was involved in a car accident. Now I just feel all alone, because I have dated a lot of guys, and I cannot date a guy for a very, very long time for some reasons. Believe you me when I say that I have tried, but nothing is working.